Welcome everyone to Rules Explained. We are going over Xwing by Fantasy Flight Games. I am John Merritt.
And I'm Rob Nothing.
Let's get started. In this episode, we're going over obstacles, squad building. We're also going to be looking at a gameplay type escalation, and I think those three things will probably wrap us up for the Xwing rules. For the obstacles, I'm not really thrilled the way they do this, but essentially this is the way it's done. If you move through, well, let's first talk about what an obstacle is. An obstacle is either an asteroid field or it's debris. The most common one is an obstacle. So over in our example, here we have our Xwing. Here we have the token for an asteroid. And over here we have a token for debris. There's no real difference between them as it pertains to rules. They're just two different types of obstacles. Switch back to our rules here. So an asteroid, now this is if you pass through it or even partially pass through it.
Even if you touch it.
Even if you look at it wrong. Okay, right. Even if you touch it. You take a red die, you roll it. If you get a hit marker, the ship suffers a hit. If a ship suffers a critical result, then the ship suffers a critical hit. During the engagement phase, if a ship is at range 0 of an asteroid and it cannot perform an attack. So if you go through it, you take, actually, even if you don't take damage, during the engagement phase, if a ship is at range 0, so if you ended your movement within that asteroid or debris field, you are at range 0 of the asteroid and you cannot perform an action. Probably because you're trying to not smash into the big asteroid that's in front of you. I'm sure it's like a bunch of asteroids that you're trying to maneuver through.
And you can't shoot either.
Correct. A debris cloud, after executing the maneuver, the ship gains 1 stress token and rolls 1 attack die. On a critical result, the ship suffers 1 critical damage. So I was wrong. An asteroid is different than a debris field.
That could represent the carnage from a previous ship. It could represent, maybe you could call it a smaller asteroid field, not maybe with something very large. Maybe like maybe you're flying through the rings of a planetary system such as Saturn or something, and you're flying through the ice chunks, and that could be considered a debris field. So there's a few narrative things you can do to say to yourself, what am I actually flying through? Even asteroid field, you could technically call them just derelicts if you really wanted to, and you're trying to fly through a field of derelict ships. So there's all sorts of narrative things you could do to make the game a little bit more varied than just the standard, oh, there's some debris, oh, there's an asteroid.
Absolutely. Now, an obstruction. If you have a debris field or an asteroid token in front of you and you're trying to shoot through it, it's then considered obstructed. So an attack is obstructed if the attacker measures range through 1 or more obstacles. If an attack is obstructed, the defender rolls 1 additional defense die during the defense dice step. So real quick, jump back to our example here. So here's our Xwing. Here's our asteroid field. This red die is going to be the defender. If I'm shooting through it, he gets 1 additional defense die. Even if he is partially obstructed by it, it is still considered obstructed. So if any part of what you're measuring passes over that asteroid, it is considered obstructed.
Yep. Now, let me go ahead and point out what I think is a glaring problem with the rules as written. If I can go ahead and suggest that the possibility of successfully navigating an asteroid field is approximately 3,720 to 1. Against. The listeners might recognize that I have just quoted the fiction of Star Wars almost directly And I have made a very poignant argument that if you're going to go and follow the fiction in a game of this sort, that maybe these asteroids should be just a little bit more potentially dangerous than just rolling one simple red die. The average starship that goes ahead and flies right into an asteroid will have no issues whatsoever. I mean, there's a significant chance that you can just take no damage at all, and there's only a slight chance that you might take 2 points of damage if you get the wrong critical card and if you roll a critical hit against yourself. So, John and I were talking about some possible solutions to this, and here's an idea for you people who like home rules, and that seems to go ahead and fit what C3PO was saying to his companion Han Solo. Perhaps if you were to go ahead and roll one attack die against your ship for every point of speed currently being executed by its maneuver dial. So if you were traveling at a speed of 1, you'd only get 1 die. But if you were trying to hurtle through that asteroid at a speed of 5, you would have to go ahead and roll an attack of 5 against you. But at the same time, what is not considered by the rules is the fact that your ship might be maneuverable enough, and your vessel or your pilot even might be just that quick enough that they could evade the asteroid. So at the same time you do this, you get your regular green defense dice against being hit by the asteroid. This might make for a little bit more complication, obviously, but it seems to go ahead and fit the fiction of the game universe more than just saying I can bump off an asteroid like so many cue balls on a billiard table.
Yeah, I mean, if I was a very agile ship, let's say I had 3 defense dice, and I was moving at a range 2, and I said, I'm going to be really careful going through this asteroid obstacle. I would then roll 2 red dice and 3 defense dice. The probability of me of successfully navigating it greatly goes up versus if I was a TIE fighter flying through that thing at speed 4 with only my 2 defense die. Odds are I'm going to take some damage.
And odds are you'll probably take enough damage that'll destroy your vessel. And that should be a distinct possibility. There should be more threat present when I'm going and flying through asteroids. Otherwise, C3PO is lying. And as we know, he is incapable of misrepresenting.
That is true. And believe me, the asteroid won't feel a thing.
Yes, in case you're concerned about asteroid rights, they will not go ahead and feel anything in this case, unless it happens to be inhabited by some sort of gigantic spaceman.
Now, I don't know why they put this here, but in the instructions they have, here's where you can assemble your dial ID token. Your dial ID token assembly
Seems kind of random.
is on page 15. I would suspect that you can also get that much earlier on in the rules on how to assemble it, but they decided to stick it on page 15. Don't know why. So that leads us into squad building. So now we've learned all the rules. We know how to play. We know how to attack, know how to defend. We know the obstacles. We know, there are no sides. There's just simply initiative for movement and attacking and actions and all that fun stuff. Now we want to build our squads. There are 2 ways of doing it. The first way is the quick build. So if you and your buddy just want to get down and throw down a game, Vet Fantasy Flight Games have created these quick builds, which is really actually, I think, kind of slick. They say for an average game, you want to select an 8 threat level. So on each of the quick build cards, there will be a card. Like, for example, in the rules, it has the one here for Luke Skywalker. He is a threat level 3. You can tell that by the 3 orange bars. There's a maximum threat level of 5. And this tells you which ship, who's flying it, and any add-ons he may have. So Luke has, the proton torpedoes, the R2-D2, the servomator S-foil, stuff. So, but anyway, the point is, it tells you which add-ons you get. So it's done. You don't have to, think about anything or, add together the points. You get 8 total, done.
Yeah, that kind of simplifies things greatly because, like you said, if I'm building a squad in the normal circumstances, I got to do all these calculations as far as the number of points, and then I have to go ahead and balance the points out with my opponent. It might be within 5 or 4, whatever.
Right.
This avoids the whole situation and just says, hey, I get threat level 5, you get threat level 5, and here are the cards you get, and let's just play.
Yep. Now, if you really like to break it down, they do have squad points. An average game is about 200. Well, it's not about. It is 200 points. Fantasy Flight Games created a website called squadbuilder.fantasyflightgames.com. You can go there. You can create your squad. They've got every model, every point, every add-on. It's really, really slick. It's really slick the way in which they do it.
I like the phrase, so players do not accidentally build illegal squads.
Yes, it takes all the rules into account. I think it's really slick. The other thing to point out is some cards are limited, and they are indicated as being limited by having a dot next to the name. So, like for example, for Luke Skywalker, they have a dot next to it. You're only allowed to have one of these on the board. You can't have multiple Luke Skywalkers running around. Then that takes us into this escalation gameplay. This is an alternative gameplay where and this is done with just the core rules. This is awful.
Yeah, it's basically it's a conceit to the fact that, hey, you only have 2 TIE fighters and an X-wing, and you might want to play a game for more than 30 minutes. But
Right.
we'll let the listener and viewer decide if this is a good idea or not. But go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, you've got the X-wing against the 2 TIE fighters. If your X-wing gets blown up, you then have a choice of having 2 other ships come in. If the TIE fighters blow up, then you have a choice of other ships coming in. They enter the game right next to a hyperspace marker, so it shows them coming in from hyperspace, and then you have to roll a die to see where it actually comes in on the tri-entrance level. There's one of 3 areas where it can come in, and basically, if you can kill your opponent and the next wave coming in, you win.
And I
Ta-da.
guess the next ship that comes in is supposed to be somehow more powerful than the previous ship,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no narrative sense to this. There's no game fiction sense to this. It just seems like an artificial way to go ahead and continue the game. There are other ways you could house rule this by just saying, if I lose my ship, the next turn I can bring in another generic ship. I can't bring in Luke Skywalker again per se, but I can bring in a generic ship, in my entry area, and so on and so forth. It just, I don't know. I have not seen this played in a way that's satisfactory yet. So I'm going to reserve my total condemnation, but I'm going to go ahead and suggest that it doesn't seem to make any sense. So hopefully somebody gets incensed by this comment and decides to go ahead and give us some sort of feedback on this as far as why this is necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's beyond the core set. So all the rules we've stated so far are just in the core set. There are many, many rules beyond this. So as you can see here, they've added in the calculate rule. I could see the droids. There is actually a droid army faction, which basically says if you perform a calculation, you can either change an eyeball result to a hit or an evade, which is the same as a focus, except probably for droids. They've
It
added
might
in
also, and I have not seen this one used yet, but I wonder if there's a card out there that says, targeting computer. Because I can see how that could be used in a scenario like a trench run. And if you
Sure.
had a targeting computer upgrade, that calculate function could be used to increase your chances of hitting that womp rat. I'm sorry, that thermal exhaust port.
And they've added in cloaking. They've got jamming devices. You can reinforce your
Oh, come on.
shields.
You missed it. You missed it.
What? Cool. Oh, your favorite.
No,
My
no,
apologies.
no ship can have no ship that small can have a cloaking device.
Oh, well, they do now. And then you're able to coordinate. You can rotate. But the point being is, there's many, many different actions beyond than what is in just the core set. And they got tractor beam tokens, condition cards, just a bunch of stuff. And guys, that is going to take us for the rules for X-Wing by Fantasy Flight Games version 2. If you have any questions or comments, please email us at rulesexplained@gmail.com. We'd like to thank Ethan for the music. He always does a fantastic job on those. I'm going to beg him to re-record some for us, perhaps get a new intro or outro, or create some bumpers for next season. You can always find us on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. Links will be in the show notes, as the link for the Squad Builder. I'm John Merritt.
I'm Rob Nothing.
Guys, thank you for listening.
Adios.